The year was 1865, and the Wyoming Territory was a brutal place for a woman alone, a place that took dreams in its teeth and chewed them to bone. Annabelle Cross gripped the worn leather reins of a stagecoach bench as the wheels jostled hard over a rut in the road. Her left leg, stiff, twisted since birth, throbbed beneath the layers of her traveling dress. But she kept her chin high, blue eyes burning with a stubborn light that not even the dust-choked horizon could dim. She had come west chasing hope, a mail-order bride, promised in writing by a man named Elijah Harrow that she could start again, that her limp didn't matter, that a good woman, loyal and hardworking, would always find her place out here. But men lied, especially lonely men with land to their name and bitterness sown deep in their hearts. Ahead, the small, sun-scorched settlement of Mercy Ridge blurred in the heat, just a cluster of weather-beaten buildings braced against the wind. No welcoming banners, no joyful music, just silence and a sky wide enough to swallow a soul whole. The driver, a grizzled old freight hand named Tully, spat over the side of the stage. "You sure about this, Miss Cross?" His voice was rough, but not unkind. "Harrow ain't got much of a name round these parts. Mean streak runs through him like bad whiskey." Annabelle didn't flinch. "I didn't come for his name." Tully snorted. "No, reckon you didn't." He left her at the edge of town, where the dust met the hard-packed earth of Mercy Ridge's single street. She stepped down slowly, favoring her good leg. Every eye on that street turned. Men in sweat-stained hats, women with faces like carved stone. She might as well have been a ghost risen from the plains. She found Elijah Harrow near the corral behind the saloon, a tall, broad-shouldered rancher with hard eyes and a jaw set like granite. The moment he saw her dragging her twisted leg across the dirt, something cold shuddered behind his stare. "You Annabelle Cross?" "Yes," she said, voice steady. "I came like you asked. I have my papers. We corresponded for months." He didn't even glance at the letter she held out. "Thought you'd look different." Her heart clenched. "Different how?" He spat into the dust. "Whole." The word hit harder than a slap. Around them, the quiet was thick as wool. She squared her shoulders. "I cook. I mend. I read scripture. I can tend stock, fetch water, patch a roof. I didn't come west for charity, Mr. Harrow." "You came west thinking a cripple belongs on my land." His voice was iron. "My sons need a mother who can keep up, not someone they gotta carry. They deserve a mother with a heart," she whispered. But Elijah Harrow had already turned his back. He walked away like she was nothing. And that was the worst part. Not the anger. Not the shame. The indifference. By sundown, she sat alone outside the trading post, her few belongings in a battered trunk. No offers of work. No place to sleep. Mercy Ridge wasn't a town for kindness. It was a town that left the weak behind. The sky flared orange and purple over the distant hills. Coyotes sang in the scrub. And then came a voice, low, roughened by wind and travel. "Ma'am, you look like hell's own mercy spit you out." She looked up. The man was lean, sun-browned, with a rifle slung across his back and a long scar trailing down his left cheek like a faded memory of violence. His boots were worn near to ruin, his coat frayed at the cuffs, but his dark eyes were steady beneath the shadow of his hat. "I've had better days," Annabelle said dryly. He crouched nearby, elbows on his knees. "Name's Jack Callahan. Drifter. Used to be cavalry." He tipped his hat with rough courtesy. "Heard Harrow turned you out." The lump in her throat threatened to choke her. "I have nowhere to go." Jack's gaze didn't hold pity, only something quiet, measured. "There's a homestead up Red Rock way. Abandoned since the war. Ain't much more than 4 walls and a roof, but it'll keep the rain off. I was headed that direction come morning." She studied him, the worn rifle, the road-weary eyes, the way his hand never strayed far from the knife at his belt. "Why help me?" His lips twitched in something like a smile. "'Cause I seen too many good folks left behind. And I reckon even the West can stand to learn a little grace." She hesitated. But what choice did she have? By dawn, they set out together, 2 shadows against the rising sun. The journey north was no easy trail. Her legs slowed them both, but Jack never rushed her. When loose shale sent her sprawling, he caught her without comment. Where her breath came ragged with pain, he offered water without words. They crossed through gulches slick with mud, over ridges where hawks circled like warnings from God himself. At night, Jack built the fire. At dawn, he scouted the path ahead. But it wasn't just survival that bound them. It was the quiet. He told her of lost brothers, men buried in distant battlefields for a flag that had forgotten them. She told him of her mother, long dead from fever, and the father who had sold her future for a train ticket west. By the third day, when the rain swept in cold and hard, she found herself laughing, a dry, aching thing, as Jack cursed the skies. "Guess the Lord don't much favor us," he muttered. Annabelle shook her head. "Or maybe he favors the stubborn." He glanced at her then, really looked like he saw past the limp, past the patched skirts, to the steel beneath. "You might just be right." On the fifth day, they reached Red Rock Way, a lonely cabin sagging beneath the weight of years. The door hung loose on its hinges. Inside, dust coated the floor like snow. "It ain't much," Jack said. But to Annabelle, it was everything. 4 walls, a roof, a place to stand when the world pushed back. They worked side by side, clearing debris, patching leaks, salvaging what little furniture remained. Jack hunted rabbit and wild turkey. Annabelle boiled water, mended cloth, swept out the ghosts of years gone. And in that hard, quiet labor, something shifted. Jack's glances lingered longer. Her laughter came easier. But peace in the West was a fragile thing. On the 7th morning, tracks appeared near the creek, fresh boot prints. More than one man. Jack's jaw tightened. "Harrow's men," he said grimly. "Or worse." Annabelle's heart stuttered. "He'd come after me?" Jack loaded his rifle with calm precision. Some men can't stand being told no. The sun dipped low as shadows lengthened around the cabin. Jack set traps along the trail, his movements practiced and sure. "Get inside. Bar the door. If I don't come back by dawn." "You're not facing them alone." Their eyes met, challenge against stubborn resolve. "You've got grit, Miss Cross. I'll give you that. And you've got a fool's heart, Mr. Callahan." But neither of them smiled. Night fell. The wind howled through Red Rock Way like the cry of something ancient and waiting. In the darkness, Annabelle knelt beside the window, hands clenched tight in prayer. Not for mercy, for strength. And outside, where the lonely road met blood and iron, Jack Callahan waited with rifle in hand. Because out here, in the unforgiving bones of the West, true love didn't bloom with promises. It was forged in fire, and neither of them would go quietly. Not tonight. Not ever. The sun slipped low behind the jagged spine of the distant mountains, its fading light spilling across the plains like blood seeping into dry earth. Dust swirled along the lonely road where Clara Bennett sat atop a battered wagon, her hands clenched white-knuckled on the reins. The ache in her left leg, twisted and weakened since childhood, throbbed like an old wound that would not let her forget. She could feel every splinter of the wornwood beneath her, every cruel mile between here and the life that had turned its back on her. Behind her, the raw memory of Fort Bridger burned hotter than any sunset. Letters exchanged, promises made, a husband-to-be who spoke of hope and fresh starts. And yet when he'd seen her limp from the wagon, his smile had withered. One look, one judgment. His words cut cleaner than a knife. "I won't what a cripple." No argument. No mercy. He'd turned his back on her before her boots touched the dust. Now she was miles from town, heart hollow, pride shattered, unsure whether to curse the frontier or her own foolishness for believing kindness still lived in a man's heart. The wind picked up, whispering through the brittle grass. Coyotes yipped in the distance, their voices sharp as flint in the falling dark. Clara urged the tired horse forward, though the trail blurred through her unshed tears. She didn't cry, not often, but tonight the loneliness was too big to swallow. The wagon jolted, the wheel caught in a rut, and snapped with a splintering crack. She lurched sideways, thrown hard to the ground. The air rushed from her lungs. Pain exploded up her leg like wildfire. For a long moment, there was only dust and the quiet hum of insects. Then came the realization the wheel was ruined. The horse snorted, restless. Night was falling fast. Clara dragged herself to her feet with shaking arms. She could feel the prairie watching her, the wild things waiting for her to falter. "This is how it ends," she whispered. Alone, a shadow moved along the rise ahead. Her heart stopped. A rider. She tasted fear, sharp, metallic, but held her ground. The rider approached without hurry. His figure cut a lean silhouette against the dying light. Broad-shouldered, straight-backed, moving with the loose grace of a man long married to the saddle. His hat was pulled low, shadowing a face weathered by sun and solitude. He reined in a few feet from her wrecked wagon. Silence hung thick between them. "You all right, ma'am?" His voice was low, edged with the roughness of unused words. Clara squared her shoulders, chin high despite the trembling in her limbs. "I'll manage." His eyes flicked to the splintered wheel, then to her unsteady stance. "Doesn't look like it." There was no mockery in his tone, no pity either, just a simple statement of fact. He dismounted, leading his horse closer. In the fading light, she caught the faint scar that crept from the corner of his jaw into his beard. A man who'd seen violence and lived to ride away from it. "My name's Eli Cartwright," he said. "I ranch a ways north of here." Clara hesitated, pride and fear warring in her chest. "Clara Bennett." He tipped his hat. "Miss Bennett." She steeled herself for the questions, for the judgment, but none came. Instead, he knelt beside the broken wheel, running a calloused hand over the damage. "Too busted to fix tonight. Near a settlement's 20 miles west." His gaze lifted to hers. "You'll freeze out here come nightfall." Clara hesitated. The scars from Fort Bridger were too fresh. "I can take care of myself." Eli didn't argue. He didn't press. He merely nodded toward his horse. "I've got a cabin near the creek. Ain't much, but it's dry and warm. You got my word. I won't touch a hair on your head unless you ask me to." That earned him a look, sharp, assessing. Most men were quicker to claim ownership than offer respect. Something in his quiet steadiness settled the wild beating of her heart. Perhaps it was foolishness, or desperation, or the raw ache of wanting to believe there was one man in this harsh world who didn't measure a woman by the strength of her limbs. Clara gathered what little she had, limping to his horse with all the dignity she could muster. Eli swung her up with surprising gentleness. She felt the heat of him, solid, steady, and for the first time in days, the knot in her chest loosened. They rode through the gathering dark, the prairie unfolding around them like an endless sea of shadows. Coyotes called. Somewhere in the distance, an owl hooted low. Eli didn't speak unless spoken to. When he did, his words were plain, without decoration or deceit. The cabin came into view, rough-hewn logs, smoke curling from the chimney. Inside it was sparse but clean. A rifle rested above the door. A braided horsehair rope hung beside a battered hat. He stoked the fire, set coffee to brew, and laid out a bedroll near the hearth. "You'll sleep here," he said. "I'll take the lean-to." Clara sat stiff-backed and used to kindness without strings. "Why help me?" Eli shrugged. "Seems to me the world's got enough men looking to tear folks down. I'd rather not be one of them." Simple words, but they struck deeper than any sermon. Days passed. Clara learned the rhythm of Eli's quiet life, the slow, steady labor of a man who asked nothing from the land but what he needed. He chopped wood with a measured grace. He rode out at dawn to check cattle, returning at dusk with the smell of sun and dust clinging to him. He never asked about her leg, never stared. He spoke to her as if she were whole, not out of politeness, but because he truly didn't see her as broken. It unsettled her and warmed her. In the evenings, he'd sit by the fire, strumming a battered guitar, humming low songs that carried a sorrow older than words. She found herself watching him, the set of his jaw, the shadow of old grief in his eyes. He was a man carved from the bones of the land, quiet, resilient, steady. She hadn't known men like him existed. Then came a night the storm rolled in, hard and fast. Thunder cracked like gunfire. The wind howled through the cracks in the cabin walls. Clara sat near the fire, heart pounding as the past clawed its way up from the dark. Memories of being small, helpless, mocked for what she could not change. Eli sat beside her, silent. "You think I'm weak," she whispered. His brow furrowed. "No, ma'am. I think you've survived things most folks wouldn't. That ain't weakness." She stared at him, raw, vulnerable. "I was a fool to think a man could want me." Eli's jaw tightened. He set down his guitar. "Then he was a damn fool to let you go." Silence stretched between them. In that quiet, something shifted. Not pity, not charity. Respect. Perhaps even something gentler, something dangerous. Hope. Days turned into a week. Clara found herself laughing again, soft, unguarded. She helped where she could, mending, cooking, tending the small garden behind the cabin. Her legs still ached, but her heart began to heal. Then came the rider. Dust clouded the trail. A man from Fort Bridger, the same suitor who had cast her aside, come to reclaim his mistake. But not out of love, out of wounded pride. Eli stood in the doorway, rifle at his side. "She ain't going nowhere with you," he said flatly. The man sneered. "You think you can keep what ain't yours, Cartwright?" Eli's voice was low steel. "She's her own woman, and if she stays here, it'll be her choice, not yours or mine." The man spat, cursed, rode off in the dark. Clara's knees gave out only when the dust settled. Eli caught her, steady as ever. "I told you," he said quietly. "You're stronger than you know." And in that moment, wrapped in his arms, the storm passed, the past behind her, she believed him. Not because of the words, but because of the man who spoke them. The wind howled through the canyons like some wounded beast, dragging dust and ash across the dying sun. Clara Bennett stood on the ridge, Eli Cartwright at her side, both shadowed by the blood-colored sky stretching out over the broken land. Below them, like rats circling a carcass, Jasper Kane and his men gathered around the smoldering ruins of the cabin that once promised her sanctuary. Smoke curled black and bitter. The boards Eli had hewn with quiet patience now lay scattered like bones. Her crutch dug into the hard-pan earth. Her ruined leg ached with each ragged breath. But pain was nothing new. Neither was loss. Eli shifted beside her, Winchester steady in his calloused grip. His face, rough-hewn like the land itself, held a stillness she'd come to know well. But his eyes, Lord, those eyes, burned with something deeper than rage. Purpose, protection, and perhaps, God help her, love. "They'll come for us," she said, voice low. "They're already here." Indeed, movement stirred below, a flash of steel, a cruel laugh carried on the wind. Jasper Kane, once the man who'd promised her a future, now the vulture come to pick her clean. His words from weeks past still blistered in her mind. Cripple, burden. No man wants a wife he has to carry. She had believed him once. Not now. "Clara." Eli's voice was gravel and thunder. "We hold him here. They get past us, they'll never stop." She nodded, the weight of that truth settling over her like a worn blanket. This wasn't just a fight for survival. It was a reckoning. Blood and fire would decide their fate. Below, Kane's voice rose sharp and mocking. "Come down, Clara. No sense dying for a cripple's pride. Be a good girl. Be smart." Her grip tightened on the small pistol Eli had pressed into her palm days ago. The metal felt heavy, but sure, just like the man beside her. Eli's jaw worked. "He underestimates you." "They always do," she whispered. Then the first shot rang out, sharp, cracking the quiet like glass. A warning, or a promise. Kane's men surged forward, 4 of them at first, guns raised, boots scattering gravel. Eli's rifle thundered. The first man dropped before he'd taken 5 steps. The second veered off, scrambling for cover behind a boulder. Clara didn't hesitate. She fired low, catching a third man's leg. He howled, crashing hard. But the fourth, lean and fast, closed the distance. "Stay behind me," Eli ordered. She wanted to obey. But hadn't she spent enough of her life hiding? Clara gritted her teeth and swung her crutch like a club as the man lunged. It caught him hard across the jaw. Bone cracked. He staggered, long enough for Eli's knife to find his gut. Blood sprayed hot. The man collapsed, gurgling curses. More were coming. Kane's voice snarled like a rattler. "You're dead, Cartwright, and I'll drag her back myself." The air stank of gunpowder and sweat. Eli grabbed her wrist, eyes burning. There's a back way down the ridge, narrow, dangerous. I'm not leaving you. You're not. We moved together. Side by side, they slipped down the jagged slope, boots skidding, rocks tumbling beneath them. Shots cracked above, echoing wild in the gulch. Kane's men followed, relentless. By the time they reached the ravine floor, Clara's breath came shallow, her bad leg screaming. But ahead, through the scrub and shadow, loomed the narrow rock pass Eli had mentioned. A natural choke point. Perfect for an ambush. Go, he urged. No, she gripped his arm. We end this. His gaze held hers, softened for just a heartbeat. Pride. Affection. Something unspoken. Then the first of Kane's men rounded the bend. Too fast, too careless. Eli's rifle barked. The man crumpled. But Kane himself wasn't far behind. And he was smart. Too smart. A rough voice echoed from the shadows. You think you can keep her from me, Cartwright? I already owned her once. You're just keeping my property warm. Clara's stomach twisted. Rage scalded her throat. I'm no one's property, she called. A cold laugh. Eli pressed her gently back into a crevice of stone. When I draw him out, you run. No, Clara, I'm done running. For a beat. Only the wind answered. Then Eli nodded, something grim and proud flickering across his battered face. Together, then, Kane emerged from the dust and dusk like the devil himself. Long coat flapping, shotgun ready. Scars marred his face, a man carved by violence and ruled by it. I should have left you to rot, girl, he sneered. Would have saved us both the trouble. Eli stepped forward, rifle lowered but ready. This ends here, Kane. A shrug. Fine by me. The standoff coiled tight as a whip. Then, movement. Kane fired. Eli spun sideways, the blast grazing his shoulder. He hit the ground hard. Clara didn't think. Didn't pause. She stepped from the shadows, pistol raised. Kane turned, too late. Her shot hit center mass. He staggered, shock and fury twisting his face. Eli, bloodied but alive, surged up, knife flashing. The two men crashed together, grappling like wild animals. Dust flew. Boots scuffed. Kane landed a brutal punch. Eli reeled, then drove his knife deep into Kane's side. The outlaw choked, eyes wide. Should have killed me first, Eli rasped. Kane crumpled, life draining from him like water through sand. Silence fell thick, ragged. Clara dropped her pistol. Her knees threatened to buckle. But Eli was already at her side, steadying her, his touch rough but careful. It's over, he said. She wasn't sure if it was meant for her or himself. Together, they staggered from the ravine, bloodied, scarred, but breathing. The world beyond the canyon stretched wide and unforgiving. But not empty. The cabin was gone. The past was ash. But something new stirred beneath the ruin. Hope. It came in small things. Eli's hand brushing hers without hesitation. His quiet voice breaking the long silence. You fought like hell. She met his gaze, saw the weight of his words. I learned from the best. He huffed a laugh, dry and tired. You know what Kane said you were, Clara? Never were. Neither was he. Beneath all that grit and scar, there was a man who loved fiercely, quietly, who stayed. The sun slipped lower, casting long shadows. But ahead, beyond the blood and fire, was the long road east, or west, wherever they chose, together. Maybe the world would never be kind. Maybe there would always be men like Kane waiting in the dark. But Clara Bennett had found something Kane could never touch. A man who saw her strength, not her scars. And maybe, just maybe, that was enough. As they walked, Eli's voice rumbled low. Got a lot of building to do. She glanced up. Cabin. He shook his head. A life. And Clara smiled. A quiet, hard-won thing. Because for the first time in forever, she believed him.